I don't agree that those idiots that went into the Capitol were there to subvert democracy. I think most of them were just a bunch of potheads that thought it was a big party to go crash the Capitol, and I don't think that Trump sent them at all.
A bunch of potheads? That's a new one. Tell me, do the potheads you know act like this? Yeah, those potheads were really smoking it up there in that clip. And Trump most certainly did send them to the Capitol. He even talked about it in a speech to the same crowd that then stormed the Capitol. And he admits it here. Watch.
And we're not going to stand for it. And all of that stuff is going to be written out on day one. It's all going out. You know the steps when you make your speech in front of millions of people and you're making the beautiful speech, looking down to the white. That was one of the great scenes I've ever seen. By the way, I think J6 had an equal amount of people. It's the biggest crowd I believe I ever spoke to. You never hear about that, do you? You have the hostages, the J6 hostages, I call them. Nobody's been treated ever in history so badly as those people. Nobody's ever been treated in our country.
Not even folks in Japanese internment camps? Not even black people under slavery or Jews during the Holocaust? And yet he continues to rile up his base with rhetoric like this.
Trump calls the evil people trying to destroy this nation, and that's exactly what it is. I spoke a little bit about that earlier. There is an evil in this country I'm not sure we've ever seen before. We are a God-loving country, and our faith is stronger than the evil that's trying to destroy this country. But it's up to us, the God-loving people, to make sure the devil, who is working overtime, does not keep destroying this country.
Now, many people might say, oh, but I'm tired of talking about January 6th. That was in the past. It's exhausting having to rehash it. I'm just focused on the future. Trust me, I get it. But we cannot go forward into the future until we address the past and present harms that Republicans continue to go on and on about January 6th. That's why I've come up with a list of 4 big takeaways from January 6th and how it affects our country going forward. And the first one is January 6th exposes Republicans' obvious double standard. Let's engage in some critical thinking, shall we? Let's replace Donald Trump with Joe Biden. Joe Biden just lost the 2020 election in this hypothetical example, and in his pursuit to prove that he won, lost 61 out of 62 court cases, even decided by Biden-appointed judges himself in this hypothetical example, and decided to hold a rally near the Washington Monument, encouraging supporters to stop the steal and march up to the Capitol and take the country back, while not having any evidence whatsoever, only riling up his supporters, giving aid and comfort to the enemies of people trying to overthrow the government. There would be swift accountability, and I would be wanting that accountability, even as a Democrat myself. Because for anyone that tries to violate the Constitution in the pursuit of overthrowing election results they do not like, that is going against the founding of what this country is. So why do Republicans feel so above the law that they can do it and have immunity from that accountability? You see how if you switch those roles, Republicans would immediately change their position because it's based on convenience, not on an actual equal application of law. Second, this event, January 6th, was anticipated by the framers of our Constitution. They knew that it was likely that a day would come about when a group that lost an election would decide to attempt and overthrow the government as a way to retain power instead of gracefully accepting defeat for the stability of the country. And this is precisely why the 14th Amendment was written, which reads that no person serving in government, I'm paraphrasing there, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Donald Trump speaking before the same crowd that stormed the Capitol, validating their concerns, spreading misinformation about elections, leading them to justify violence, to break into the Capitol, to attempt to stop the certification of election results, is aiding and abetting an insurrection, and Donald Trump's speech validating the concerns, giving aid and comfort to the enemies thereof of the state. And that's why states like Colorado, Maine, and now very likely Massachusetts and Illinois have started to actually say, hey, Trump violated the 14th Amendment. He violated the Constitution, the lifeblood of our country. There is a good argument to be made that he should not be on the ballot. The third big takeaway is that January 6th was a huge display of white privilege. And I'm saying that as a white person myself. Look, we have seen multiple instances of people of color being unalived because of their pre-existing skin color, based on the interpretation of a threat. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, O'Shea Sibley, of course, George Floyd. These are people that were just doing normal civilian things, and yet there was an escalation of violence just by existing. Meanwhile, there was such a degree of plausible deniability for the people that stormed the Capitol, which, let me just say, were mostly white Americans. And they stormed the Capitol, and they were always given the benefit of the doubt. Oh, they are not meaning to be violent. They're not meaning to be violent. When they're saying things like hang Mike Pence, looking for Nancy Pelosi, breaking windows, throwing flags, as you can see in that clip. You can see that there is a discrepancy between protesting when you're white and protesting when you are a person of color. Now, there's so many other things that can go into it, like, specifically where you're from, your economic background, all of this. But simply put, if January 6th was a whole bunch of black folk protesting, they would all be shot. But since it was white folk, only one person was shot. Meanwhile, and the last big takeaway is that January 6th sets a precedent, meaning that if you or your side loses an election, and even though you have no evidence, facts, science, statistics, data to back it up, even if you lose 61 out of 62 court cases, even by judges that you yourself nominated and got confirmed to certain courts, that you can just protest and attempt to overthrow democracy saying F you the entire system because you didn't win. It sets a precedent going forward for election denialism to be cultivated by especially the far right in this country, to deny any election that they lose as rigged, whereas any election that they win as legitimate. It's very much a heads I win, tails you lose kind of situation. And I mean that. It's where if you win Monopoly, it's because you cheated. But if I win Monopoly, it's because I'm a good player. It leads us, this sets a precedent for allowing that to be cultivated, and we cannot afford to have that happen in a system where we all are the government, not just them. So while we can laugh at comments like this guy saying that January 6th was a whole bunch of potheads and that they were not sent by Trump, that is dangerous misinformation that needs to be held accountable, because January 6th was an assault on our democracy. I don't like to excessively talk about it because it can be uncomfortable, but it needs to be mentioned. This is a day that will go in the history books, and we need to not shy away from calling it what it is, an assault on our democracy itself. My name is Scott Johnson. You can find more of me, a Southern political gay guy, on my YouTube and on my TikTok, which are both in the description box below. You definitely want to go and check them out. I do a morning live show on TikTok at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. We had a lot of awesome viewers this morning. But most importantly, if you enjoyed this content, please make sure to subscribe to Rebel HQ. Smash that subscribe button and click the little bell for notifications so you always see the next video. I'll see you soon.